What is up, guys? For this video we're finally going to be upgrading the fuel system on the Dakota. Over here I've got a 20-gallon eBay fuel cell, got the intake manifold that I've shown you guys before. I got all the hoses and lines and stuff hooked up here all ready to go. It's got the 60-pound Bosch injectors on it, the modified fuel rails, modified throttle body, all of that stuff. I got the belly pan bolted up to it already and all the bolts Loctited and good to go. Same with the throttle body. The fuel cell, I went ahead and swapped out the filler with this one with a neck and just pretty much a conventional screw-on cap because this thing's going to be in the bed. Underneath the bed cap, it'll be easier to pump gas into it with this thing kind of shooting off to the side. Got a bunch of AN lines and hoses and stuff in that box, which of course go with the fuel cell and this. I also got a fuel pump relay and a couple other little random things in there. I'm going to start just by working on the engine bay portion, so I'm going to put the intake manifold on first before I start messing with the fuel cell. So I've got to move all this stuff here in the engine bay, plugs, wires, vacuum lines. I got to drain a good portion to cool it out just that I don't have it leaking all over inside of the engine once I take the intake manifold off. I'm going to get started working on this. I'll sit you guys up somewhere once I'm doing something interesting, maybe do a little bit of a time lapse here and there. And yeah, let's just get to it. Alright, I forgot to hit record to time-lapse some of the disassembly up here, so I guess you guys will just get to see me pulling out the intake manifold, and that'll be just about it. So I've got all the wiring harness, all the coolant lines off, I drained the coolant out and spilled quite a bit of it on the floor. Yeah, pretty much everything's out except for fuel lines and the intake manifold itself and this bypass hose right here. So I'm going to get those off, and we will get this thing pulled off and then start cleaning up. I think I might grab an air hose and kind of blow this little valley out down here before I go ahead and pull it off too, but we're pretty close to having this thing off and refitting the new one. Alright, check that out. Got the intake off. This thing is surprisingly clean inside of here. So, that is good. These engines are known for having a lot of sludge buildup in this valley here, and this one looks pretty good. So, I've got to go and scrape all of this gasket material off. We're looking pretty good so far. The intake came off without too much trouble. Of course, the thing's probably been on here for 20 or more years. But yeah, I'm very impressed with how clean the engine is inside of here. So, I'm going to get to scraping this gasket off and just cleaning this whole area up, and then I'll give that new intake manifold one last clean up real quick, and we will get that on here and kind of start reassembling some of this stuff, and then I'm going to start removing all of the old fuel system stuff. Alright, I got the engine all cleaned up, and a quick little tip for you guys, if I can grab one of them, is if you got old jeans or something, they're really good for doing a final wipe down on any gasket surfaces or anything, because they'll pick up a lot of dirt and they'll kind of polish it up a little bit for you too. And it won't leave pieces of paper towel or stuff behind, like a rag or microfiber or anything like that, wood or paper towels and stuff. So got the gasket set, plop them in there, and then stick the intake on, and I'm going to just kind of lightly bolt it down for now. I haven't figured out what the torque spec is for it yet. Also, I bought gaskets for a later year Dakota, and they have like metal and stuff in them. The older Dakotas like these, if you buy a gasket set for say a 92 like this, you'll get these stupid cork gaskets, but if you buy one for like a 2000 or 2003, I think these were for, they've got metal in them and much better sealing areas and stuff. And the gasket for the belly pan is improved also, so that's very important because they updated the gasket design for some of the later Dakotas. It looks pretty good on there. I like that. Kind of fits with the valve covers. It's definitely the nicest looking part on the entire engine pretty much. I'm going to get this bolted up and start removing some stuff just up in the engine bay here. May go underneath the truck and start dropping the tank. So I'm going to get busy working on all of that stuff, and I'll just kind of give you guys an update later on, because this stuff is going to be pretty boring and very difficult time-lapse. Also, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I got a set of brand new intake manifold bolts. This is very important because the old ones like to rust out. So if you're doing this, get new bolts. Don't try reusing your old ones. This engine is in pretty decent shape, and some of the bolts were rusted out pretty thin. I've seen ones that have rusted out to completely nothing before. In fact, the engine that this intake came off of had the back corner bolt literally didn't exist anymore. Alright, I got everything all tidied up in the engine bay and put back together. The only thing that needs to be hooked up in the engine bay is fuel lines, and I just got to put coolant in it, and that's it. I got the alternator and all the wiring put back on. I reran some of the vacuum lines. I'm not too happy about how this looks because that's the one that runs the blow valve, but I'll redo that later, but this will just work for now. Reran the vacuum lines back here since I don't need that block anymore because I don't have a bunch of stuff running off of it. Put the fuel pressure gauge from my regulator on the little T I have on this intake manifold or on these fuel rails here, so I have a pressure gauge of some sort at least. It reads in bar and it's an eBay gauge, so it's probably not super accurate, but it's better than nothing. So I'm going to jack the truck up, get underneath of it, disconnect the fuel lines, and then drop the tank. I did get all the gas out of it. There's only maybe 2 or 3 gallons in it. So I can drop that thing out, get that out of there, and then it'll be time to start fitting the fuel cell. I've got to cut a hole for the sump to sink underneath the bed because it hangs pretty far down, and then I can start mounting the fuel pump and stuff, running lines, and hopefully I'm hoping to have all this stuff done before noon. I got it's about 9:30 or so right now, so and my goal is to be done with this thing and have it running again by noon, so we'll see if I can make that happen. I'm not very good at getting things done quickly, so we'll just have to wait and see. Alright, it's going to be dark as hell down here, but hopefully the camera can do... Oh my god, no, it's totally black. Well, I'm about to drop the tank. I'm actually underneath of it right now. I got the lines. You can kind of see them laying down over there, so... It's way too dark down here. I don't have any good lights to use, so I'm going to get this tank dropped. I might set the camera like outside somewhere so you guys can watch it full, because there's no weight in here. I should be able to just kind of let it fall on the ground and we'll be all set. So I think, let us sit you guys right here. That way you can watch it drop once I get it out. There we go. There we go. Rust all over me, but it's out. Oh, that's nice. The tank is just staying up. Alright. Well, in I go, I guess. Oh, I got the fillers still attached. That would explain it. Alright, I'm going to fix that and I will be back. I'm probably just going to cut them. I don't need them anymore. Alright, motherfucker. There it goes. It is pretty much out. Still has some wires are attached to it. Duh. Alright. Well, it's pretty much out. I need to unclip some of the wires running into it, and then I'll just slide it out of here. Alright, I got all of the old lines just kind of thrown in a pile here. It's a mess in here now. I got the wall bro removed and sitting right there with the new 3/8" fittings on it. And I've got this fuel cell chilling in here on its back right now. I marked out, it's really dark in here, you can't really, actually it's not doing too bad here in the bed. But I've got some Sharpie marks here in the bed floor. I'm going to drill a couple holes in each corner and then cut a nice plate out of there. That's nice, it's going to look so cool back here. I can't wait to see what that thing looks like all set up. Alright, well I definitely didn't make my time goal, but I'm actually not that far from being done. So, I can't remember where I was when I last left off. But the battery, oh actually I was recording cutting the hole back here. The battery in the camera died while I was doing it. I had a little bit of an issue getting this thing to cut because there's a cross member of some sort down here that I ran into, so I'm probably going to make a plate or something to cover this and hide it. But the fuel cell is all the way bolted in. I got all the AN fittings attached to it. This is all done, and I just finished the entire feed line, so I'll come down here and let you guys take a look at what I've got going on here. So a 90, a 10 to 6 AN adapter, and then the 3/8 inch barb adapter. Small section of hose going to, this is like a filter for a carburetor, but I figured I would use it as like a pre-screen filter for the fuel pump. And then my braided hose on that running around here, and I am going to be P-clamping all of these up once I have, actually I'm about to do it right now for this line. And then it comes up here to the wall bro, mounted up. This is actually where the second strap would have been. So this is all mounted up good and solid. And then factory fuel filter. And then I got, it's kind of dark up here, got the line here running over the cross member and then going up to the fuel rail. So that is all of that. Now I'm going to P-clamp everything up, and by P-clamp in place you're not sure what I'm talking about, it is these things right here. I'm going to use this to hold up the lines. So I'm going to go and do that to that feed line right now, and then I will start running the return line, and then after that all I have to do is wire up the pump. And I'm not going to use my wiring kit yet. I'm going to save that thing for later on down the road, and I fix all the wiring and redo some of it, because where I put the pump I can just run the original feed wire straight to it and use that. That's all that's left to do, and then I have to bring the laptop out here, change some settings, and retune it because it's got the bigger injectors and all of that stuff, and a fuel pressure regulator that works appropriately. So we're close. I'm going to go ahead and get it all finished up, and I'll grab the laptop and we will try starting this thing on. I have to put coolant and gas in, and I have to remember to do that. So, but yeah, we're very close. Hopefully in the next half hour to 45 minutes or something we will be able to fire this thing up. I have everything hooked up, wired up. All I have to do is put gas in this thing and put coolant in it and top it all off. I'll have to bleed it probably a little bit once it's been running for a minute, and I have to get the laptop out here. But we'll go underneath and I will let you guys see the finished deal. So if you might remember way back in, I don't know when it would have been, when I put the battery in the bed, I accidentally drilled a hole in the wrong spot for the ground wire to go through for the battery, or it might have been for the power wire. So I plugged it with this differential plug, and I actually ran my return line to the fuel cell through that plug. I drilled a hole in it, ran it through, so now it's got like a grommet basically to keep it from chafing against the bed. And like I said, you guys have kind of seen the setup back there. Up here, where is it? Right there is the breather filter from the breather on the fuel cell, so it comes through a bulkhead fitting and then just out into the atmosphere out here, rather than, you know, getting all built up and trapped inside of the bed. If it does happen to kind of vent into the bed a little bit, it'll actually escape out here. And of course it's got a filter on it because those pull in air, so if you have them just out pulling in atmosphere air with no filter, you'll get a bunch of dirt and stuff in your fuel cell. That's not good. You know, P-clamps holding everything up. They're not super tight in there, which is kind of what I wanted. I got some playroom so I don't have to unbolt the P-clamps in the future to remove them, but they did all just go up there above the training. You can see down there, right here actually, that's the return line coming up, and it just goes up into this fitting right here. And then right there is the breather running down through the bulkhead fitting right there. It's got a check valve type deal on it so it can't spill, and it does sit higher than my fill neck, so I don't end up, you know, going all the way up into it while I'm filling this thing with gas. And then to fill gas, I'm going to have to open the window here and then just reach in and unscrew this thing, which is pretty easy. And I'm already used to filling gas in this side because that's where the actual filler was for the tank, so I should be able to get used to that. That's why I got this thing right here, so I could take, you know, the nozzle or the, you know, the pump and just stick it in through here and not have to like wedge it in real weird and stuff. Look at this, looks so much better without the regulator and the vacuum thing. I have a couple of vacuum ports I have to plug too, and I have to get a line for the brake booster. I almost forgot about that, but You can see the fuel lines kind of running over the transmission down there, and it is all done. I used all 25 feet of the fuel line that I bought too, which is awesome. I had just enough. This should be the final fuel system upgrade this thing ever needs, other than maybe I might have to go to a bigger fuel filter, and it might need a bigger pump at some point. I don't think that Walbro should be able to handle way over 300 horsepower, which is the most I could ever see this engine taking would be 300 horsepower. So yeah, I'm going to finish all that stuff up, grab the laptop, and then I'll get back with you guys when we are ready to start it. Alright, I got everything plumbed up, wired up, I got coolant in it, I have a couple gallons of gas in it, so I'm ready to go ahead and tweak a couple settings in the Megasquirt and then try to fire it and see what it'll do. My guess is, because I think my injectors were pumping more fuel than I originally thought they were, is that when I reset the settings on the injectors, it's probably going to be lean, I would think. Yeah, it would probably be a little bit lean because it'll start correcting for injectors that aren't as much bigger as the old ones as they should be. But anyway, I actually have a sheet in the house I have to go get that has a list of specs for the injectors, but at least I know that they're 60-pound injectors, so I'll put that part of it in now and see if it'll run decently enough. But yeah, we are ready to see. I should actually see if it'll prime, so take it out of gear before I forget about it. Oh yeah, I heard it build pressure. I should probably check for leaks after doing this a couple times. Ooh, we are wet right here. Alright, I'm glad I checked because that would have been not good. Alright, I'm waiting for Tuner Studio to boot. And I've got truck on, things plugged in, so it should go straight into it as long as things are working as they're supposed to. Yes, so I need to go into basic and engine and sequential settings, I think. Yes, engine size, injector size, and burn. It'll probably need to be restarted. Yeah, it needs a power cycle, so. Alright, I'll probably just put it straight into auto tune if it does fire up here. Alright, throttle position is pretty. Ooh, that doesn't feel good at all. I'm gonna go check that out real quick. Yeah, the throttle cable was in a bit of a bind. Let's just try it. Hey, that wasn't too bad. Going dead lean though. It might take it a minute to clear up. We'll see. So I'm going to put some more fuel in manually and play around with this, see if I can get it to idle smoother, and then I'll be back. Alright, it's idling alright. It still needs a little bit more fuel put into it. I'm waiting for it to get out of warm-up enrichment so I can just put it in auto-tune and cruise around in it. So I'm going to let you guys go for now. I'm going to go take it up to the gas station, get gas in it, because it only has a couple gallons in it. And then I'll come back and let you guys know how it drives. Alright, well, the test drive went pretty good. At first, I got everything going and it started up and ran, and I was having, it was like misfiring, but it wasn't a full-on misfire. It was just really lazy, like just totally dudding out on itself. I don't know how to explain it. And I went and drove it, and it felt like it had like no power. And I checked, all 6 cylinders were firing, my plugs were all plugged in for the spark plugs, and all the injectors were plugged in. I went around and unplugged each to see if it would make it run different, and it did. It wasn't lean or rich or anything, it was just running weird, and it was backfiring every time I would shift or rev it real high. It would backfire on its way back down, which it never does. This thing doesn't backfire hardly at all. So I went around looking at it, and at first I thought maybe my crank position sensor went out because it was acting real funny. I was getting really weird timing readings and stuff, but that wasn't it. I went through it and looked at it, and it was fine. I ended up finding out that I had a ground cable hooked up to where the old EGR stuff used to be, and I bolted it up to the fuel rails, but the fuel rails and the intake manifold are painted, so I had basically zero ground running to my ignition coil, and I've got that big Mallory thing and the big Blaster 2 coil, and those need a lot of amps running through them, and it just wasn't getting enough power through the ground to feed the thing. So I moved the ground to the back of the cylinder head where it had been before, except I had it like looped with 2 wires, but it worked. But I ran it right there up to where the ground wire for the high fire is at, and it works perfectly again. So I'm going to go to the truck and add a couple more grounds to it just so I'm not stressing that one so much, or if one ground fails I have another one to kind of fall back on and the thing doesn't start running like terrible again. But it runs great. I relocated the boost line, or I ran a different boost line to the wastegate. This one comes from the intake manifold now instead of from the turbo, so it's making 5 psi flat the entire pull instead of like 4.5 or 4. So it's got a little bit more power, revs a lot better, it runs a lot cleaner. I don't see as much smoke and smell as much fuel coming out of it, and it idles a lot better too. It starts up a lot easier because the pressure regulator works like it's supposed to. I haven't had any more coolant leaks. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I had a coolant leak because there was coolant escaping through the threads of the one bolt on the thermostat housing. So my intake manifold's covered in coolant up front, the one I just freshly painted and everything. I haven't had any more fuel leaks. Didn't have any issues with any of the lines I put on it or anything like that. All those are good. The fuel cell setup seems to work. It's very easy to actually fill the thing through that side window at the gas station, which is a relief to me. The Dakota has a completely upgraded fuel system that is ready for 300 plus horsepower, probably 400 plus horsepower if I were to maybe beef up some of the lines and stuff. It's very, very happy where it's at. So that thing is done. Now before I go, I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek at what the next video will be, and it's hiding here in this oil pan. And there we go, look at those. So those are Harlan Sharp roller rocker arms, and they are a higher ratio than the stock ones on the Dakota. So not only are they, roller bearing or needle bearing, whatever you want to call it, so they reduce a little bit of friction, but they're a higher ratio, so they would have a similar effect to having like a mild street cam on the thing. And as if you guys are probably aware, you can't buy cams for these, so that is the best I can do. I'm going from a 1.7 to 1, or 1.6 to 1 is what the stock rock arms are. Those are a 1.7 to 1, and they fit underneath the stock valve covers. They work with the stock rods, valves, and everything. Nothing needs to be changed. You just bolt them in. They are literally intended to be a direct bolt-in replacement for the stock ones. They're not adjustable or anything either. You just bolt them in, torque them down, that's it, and then you go out, run. Obviously it's probably going to need a retune. It's going to be, I'm guessing, a little bit lean after I do that because it's going to be pumping more air. But yeah, that's coming up next, so be looking forward to that. Hopefully I might do them tonight. I'm not really sure. I've been up for almost 24 hours, but I'm feeling really motivated, so maybe I'll do it tonight. We'll see. But yeah, Dakota's got the new fuel system all working. Basically no issues other than that one ground issue. And the small leak from the pressure gauge, but I was able to fix that just by tightening it down more. I don't know if I mentioned that either. Nothing else was leaking at all though. Like I said, everything works. So that's going to be the end of the video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'm not sure on like how well this video came out. I was all over the place pretty much all day and kind of disorganized. It's been a minute since I made a full-fledged Dakota video, so you might have to bear with me for a couple of videos before I get back into the swing of things. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Alright guys, I'm going to insert this clip somewhere, maybe at the end of the video, maybe, I don't know, in the middle of the video. I ended up removing that one-way valve from the vent line because it was causing a lot of pressure to build up inside the tank. It would allow the pump to suck air through, but it wouldn't let air escape back out because instead of being a tip valve like I thought it was just a one-way valve. So I'm just running with that one. This vent line sits quite a bit higher than the fill cap, and I don't fill the fuel cell all the way up to the top of the fill cap. I fill it up till it's maybe half an inch below the level of the top of the cell, so it's not going to slosh into that line and spill everywhere, and the bottom of the vent sits lower than the bottom of the fuel cell, so in the event of a rollover, fuel isn't just going to be able to rush around everywhere. I also made a little block-off plate out of an old bicycle sprocket for that ugly ass hole that I had down here, which I think it looks pretty neat. It still smells like paint, but I did that to kind of hide the ugly cut, and you can still see the AN fittings there because the sprocket wasn't big enough, so I figured I would show off the fittings and hide the ugly portion of the cut. Just wanted to add this clip in just to show you guys this. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to add this in the middle of the video or at the end of the video. I just got doing my rough edit, so I don't know where this is going to go. But if this is the end of the video, I guess I will see you guys later, and if it's not, then we will get back to the video.